the war was supposed to be over. I mean, after D-Day, the Germans did nothing but retreat and retreat and retreat, and the men started talking about being home by Christmas. But then Hitler threw all of his military might into one final offensive, and it put a huge dent in the U.S. line of advance. If you looked at it on a map, you could see a huge bulge, and they called it the Battle of the Bulge. Well, inside that bulge was a small town of Bastogne. And Bastogne was still held by the Americans. Right before the Germans pushed past it, American forces led by the 101st Airborne Division made it into Bastogne and were holding it against the Germans. They were completely surrounded. They weren't even in winter gear. They still had their summer outfits on. They were running out of ammunition. They didn't have many supplies. And the only way they could be reinforced, starting to rain here, the only way they could be reinforced was through airdrops. But the weather was so bad that the planes could not find Bastogne, and they kept dropping supplies into the German lines. Well, the German commander knew that the Americans were outnumbered, outgunned, running out of supplies, and completely surrounded. So he sent in his demands for surrender. And General McAuliffe, the commanding officer of the 101st Airborne Division, received the demands for surrender, and he sat down and he wrote on a piece of paper a one-word answer. And he sent it back to the German commander. And he also sent that one-word answer out to all of his men. He said, the Germans have demanded our surrender. They say we are outnumbered and outgunned. They say our situation is hopeless and that if we don't surrender, we will be completely annihilated. And I said one word back to that German commander: nuts. And that made all of the Americans laugh out loud. It was like this commanding officer stuck his fingers in his ears and said, nuts on you. You're crazy if you think we're going to surrender. That's nuts that you think we're surrounded. That's nuts that you think we don't have enough supplies. I've got the best soldiers in the world, and they are not about to retreat, and they are not about to surrender. So you bring on your Germans, because we will show you the way out of Bastogne. We are not surrendering. Your unconditional surrender request is nuts. And that's the kind of attitude that helped those surrounded Americans make it through until they were the Americans finally pushed through. General Patton and his army pushed through and rescued the 101st Airborne Division. If you've seen Band of Brothers, you know that no single man in the 101st Airborne Division said that Patton rescued them. They said they were doing just fine and could have held out even longer. Nuts. Wouldn't it be great to look at the problems in your life and just say that same defiant word? Maybe you get a bad medical report, or maybe the news, or maybe something else is going on. You just look at it and say, nuts. Like, I'm not giving up. I'm not going to surrender. I'm not throwing in the towel. You think I'm done? Nuts. You think I'm going to quit? Nuts. You think I'm discouraged and just going to roll over and take it? Nuts. You see, the Bible says we are more than conquerors. Many times as Christians, we're told to turn the other cheek. And that means we're not supposed to hold grudges and fight back. But that does not mean that we don't fight our problems. That does not mean that we don't fight the forces of evil. That does not mean that we give up when things get hard. I know that your life is hard. I know that you're struggling with things that I can't even understand. But if you can look at those problems and that situation and say, nuts, you'll feel something in your heart. It'll be the stirrings of courage. And you'll realize that you have got what it takes, because you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. So turn this video off, get out there, face your problems, and say nuts and win. Because with Christ, you're more than a conqueror. God bless.